Welcome back to the table. Today we are taking a look at Palaces of Carrara, but this is the second edition that's coming from Game Brewer on GameFound very, very soon.
Yeah, this game is kind of special because it has a pretty interesting pedigree. This was designed by Kiesling and Kramer. These are designers you probably recognize. Half of that team was responsible for the game Azul, which was a big hit, and also the game Heaven and Ale, which was one of my favorite games that I've ever played. And you're actually going to maybe detect some hints of those games in this game kind of as you're playing it, but it's kind of I would say a medium light level game.
I would say this is a light to medium Euro, and that's going to depend on how you play it. There is a basic mode, and this is one of the big differences between this and the original. We're going to teach you or tell you about the advanced mode today, but we will highlight what the basic mode does. The basic mode is definitely light to medium. The advanced gets a little more in the medium range. It's definitely not erring on the heavy side, though.
No, it never gets heavy, but I think that, at least for us, at the level of gamer that we are, the advanced mode hits that sweet spot. It's not too complicated, but it still offers a lot of really interesting decisions.
Yeah, so what do we have here in front of us? Let's go over this a little bit. You've got the main board here, and you're going to see a few different things. Across the top are these cities, and the whole game kind of revolves around those cities. You're going to be building buildings in those on your own player board, stacking those buildings above each city. Then you've got the buildings, of course, right here that you're going to be selecting from when you build. And then the whole thing revolves around, no pun intended, this wheel here where you're going to be collecting blocks in order to build these buildings over here into your cities. And the mechanism here is really quite interesting.
Yeah, this wheel kind of becomes a central part of the game because it's where you're going to come to collect these blocks. Now, you're going to notice this is different from the base game. You've got these symbols or icons on these wheels that are not present in the basic game, but since we're talking about the advanced game, you'll note that each one of these symbols kind of matches one of these decorations off to the side, and each one of these inner icons is a statue, which we are representing with these little colored cubes. I think in the final version of the game it will look like statues. With this prototype, though, we do just have these colored cubes. And these are some things that you can gain in the advanced mode that you don't even use in the basic mode.
Yeah, and this is another big difference between this and the original game. These decorations, which were called objects in the original game, were simply achieved when you scored. In this game, you're going to actually be able to collect those as you take blocks, which makes the taking of the blocks quite a bit more interesting because you're not just simply taking blocks next guy's turn. You're taking blocks and maybe removing them all and getting one of those decorations. And then over here, you do have the Royal Court board. This is going to come into play basically when you score. You're going to see every player has scoring markers up here. And this is also another unique thing we'll get to when we explain scoring because it really changes up the tension involved in the scoring in the game.
Yeah, so the turn-to-turn gameplay, you're going to be doing just one of 4 things in your turn. We already kind of talked about the wheel. That is the thing that you're probably going to come to most, or the action that you're going to be taking a lot. When it comes to the wheel, you can do one of 2 things. You can either rotate the wheel, and you'll notice that when you do, you're actually changing the prices of all of these blocks, and you're going to refill the wheel with new blocks every time you do that. There will always be 11 blocks on the wheel every time you rotate. After you rotate, you can choose any one of these spaces to buy blocks from. You can buy as many as you want. Money can be kind of tight, so you're probably not going to be buying all of them. But like David said, if you do manage to clear off an entire section, then you're going to get either the statue that's there or the decoration that's there. Now, these items can either come directly onto one of your already built buildings, or they can sit in one of your warehouses to be added later. Every decoration is going to increase the value of your building by 1, and these statues are important for in-game scoring. There's a whole area control aspect with those statues. Now, if you don't want to rotate the wheel, say that you like everything where it is, you can just rotate the statue wheel in the center, basically changing which statue you'll get if you clear out a section. Now, what's really difficult to explain, and you'll have to kind of understand as you play, is the timing on when to take these blocks. Because if you take too many, you're making it very cheap for your opponent to clear it out and potentially get one of those decorations. And also, the farther you go along this wheel, some of these colors become free eventually.
Yeah, in fact, starting with this section right here, the darkest purple colored block becomes free. And over here, all but the white becomes free. And if you've never played the original game, we should explain a little bit about the blocks and how you're using them. Because the other thing you can do on your turn is to instead use blocks from behind your little player shield here, because all the blocks you have and your money are hidden information. But when you spend the blocks, you're going to build one of these 9 buildings on your player board above one of the cities. And this is really interesting because the city over on the far left requires just the white blocks. So the white block is probably the rarest, the hardest to accumulate because it's really difficult to build buildings there. Whereas over on the far right in the purple city, Larisi, you're going to be able to use any colored block to build those buildings. So for instance, if I took this villa right here and added it to Larisi, it's going to require 4 blocks of those colors. And if you look at Larisi, you can use white all the way to purple. So any of those blocks in any combination can be used to build this. I would basically put those back in the bag or the supply and then place that building above that city.
Every time you buy a building, you're going to replenish it from this pile, and so you'll always have a collection of 9 buildings to build, but you'll also have some monuments that you can build down here. Monuments are the most expensive buildings. They cost 8, but you can actually pay for them in a different way. If you want, you can just pay 8 cubes of whatever set of colors and place that monument wherever you want to place it. Or if you already have the same type of building, for example, the Biblioteca here, I can replace it and only pay the difference. So if I replace this level 4 one with this 8 one, I only have to pay 4 cubes, and now I have this 8, which will add, an 8 multiplier instead. Now, these are really important tiles for 2 reasons. Number 1, they're the biggest buildings in the game. They're worth a ton of points.
Yeah.
But also, every time you take one of your monuments, you'll get to take one of these upgrade tiles up here that's going to upgrade one of your scoring methods. Either increase the multiplier of a city or increase the multiplier that you gain when you score your green or yellow buildings, because all of that is kind of wrapped up in the different ways that you can score.
Yeah, and a lot of this will become clearer when we talk about scoring, which is the next thing you can do. The third option you have on your turn is to score. Now, one of the big differences here is the very first thing you do when you score is you're going to reach out to grab one of your scoring tokens. In the old game, you just had those sitting by your player board. Here, they're going to be out here on the royal court. And you'll see there's going to be some bonuses associated with each section. So for instance, if I chose this one, I'm going to immediately get 3 points. And then I'm going to use this scoring token. Now, as we've discussed, there are a number of different ways to score here, and it's going to be one of those things where, do I want to score this now, or maybe can I wait and get more buildings there? But just to go over some of those options, the first one is this section where you're going to score for a type of building. So if throughout the game you've collected a lot of villas, you might be able to score the villa, and then you're going to go basically villa by villa throughout all of the cities above your player board and score accordingly. Now, we haven't talked about this, but each city has either points or money. And what you're simply going to do is take the value of the building, this villa at 4, for instance, above this money in Larisi of 1, and that would be 4 money.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like Ryan said, if you get some of those upgrade tokens, you're going to be able to upgrade those a little bit. In fact, the Livorno upgrade takes it to 4 points. So if you are able to put a bunch of buildings above Livorno and score it, you can get some significant points, which I did in the one game we played.
Well, I think that's part of the balance of the game, and this is where I said it kind of reminds me of Heaven and Ale, is the timing of when you score these, because you're going to want to score some things at a low value just to get a small amount of coins. Maybe later in the game you'll want to score for a bunch of coins at once, but you might need 6 or 7 coins just to get by. And also, you're going to want to look at these rewards that you get from scoring, because you might need those rewards immediately. Because there's an interesting twist here. Whoever scores gets to take that reward, but they also take this visitor marker in front of them. Every other player can follow on their turn, and they can also score to get that reward. So I could score now for that 3 victory points. Maybe I'm not really ready to score, but I really want the 3 victory points, so I'll score something that's only going to get me maybe, $2 or $3, whatever. If I don't score now, if I just waited until this got all the way back to David, I lose the opportunity to ever get that 3 victory points. I can still score with this little pawn, but it gives me no reward for doing so. So there's a whole aspect of timing with that when it comes to choosing when to follow.
Yeah, there adds a significant amount of tension to the whole concept of scoring in this game, because even though it might be 3 points or $5, those aren't insignificant in this game. And also, no matter who you are, if you're faced with the opportunity to do a thing and get a bonus,
right,
you're often going to really consider whether you want to do that. There's going to be some times, I think, in a 3 and 4 player game where you're going to see more often people choosing not to follow, because if you've just scored maybe, and you don't really have anything else to score, and you're waiting to build something, or you've accumulated a lot of blocks so you can build, you're probably not in that scoring position. So you're probably going to miss out on that bonus. So it adds a layer of strategy to the game that didn't exist before. And makes the scoring quite a bit more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a plan on how you're going to score everything, you might not want to, like David said, because you're kind of wanting to build towards a specific plan here. Everything you're kind of doing is wanting to direct you towards this in-game scoring section. Now, in the base game, you're just going to be accruing points for all your different scoring phases, and there's a little bit of in-game scoring, but nothing as meaty as this. This is going to have you scoring a variety of different areas of the game. You're going to be scoring how many coins you have left. So getting a bunch of money, triggering all of your money cities at the end of the game can be valuable. And you can actually place one of your score markers here to increase the value of your money. Either 5 coins for a point, 3 coins for a point, or 2 coins for a point, which could be really good.
And that's one of the few areas in the game that you can take for just yourself.
Yeah.
So that only you are scoring those points per money. Because everyone's going to just score 1 point per 5, but if you can change that to a 2-to-1 ratio, that could be significant.
Yeah, and then you're going to score for your decoration. So like I said, they do have a purpose of increasing the value of your building by 1, but they also have a set collection benefit. And this is for collecting sets of the same type. So not only do you need the specific building that can hold that decoration, you also need to get all of those decorations, and you're going to do that, like we said, by being the one to clear out a space. So this also adds a whole element of strategy to this. If I see someone collecting a lot of a certain type, maybe I don't want to make it easy for you to get that type, because you're just going to be increasing your point multiplier by quite a bit.
And the interesting thing about decorations and statues, which we've only touched on a little bit, is in this version of the game, they have to go on your building tiles. In the old game, I think you could just collect the decorations or the objects then as you received them when you scored and just hold them. In this game, you have to put them on buildings or in 2 of your warehouses. So you will probably run into situations when you're collecting decorations or maybe even statues where you don't necessarily have any place to put them because there are some rules and regulations for where you can put them. Obviously, the decorations have to go on cities that show that decoration, but the statues generally have to go in cities that can be built with those color cubes, except if you're using the gilded statue up here.
Which is a special one. It's like a wild statue. And these statues are scored as well. You're going to be doing area control, like I said, and this is the last thing you're going to score. You're going to look at how many statues you have in every one of your city columns, and you're just going to see who has the most. Now, these statues can also be scored. You can trigger one of the scorings to score every statue that's in a certain column, but the in-game scoring is probably where you're going to get a lot of points for these. And again, you're wanting to look at what other players are doing to see if they have a lot of tiles in white and they have a statue on every one, it's probably not worth fighting for that. Not when you could just come and do yellow for 1 less point.
Yeah, the scoring variety in general, not only in final scoring, but some of the scoring that we even glossed over throughout the game, there's a lot to it. In fact, I wanted to save it a little bit for last just to reiterate. The different scoring you do in this game is really sort of the crux, I think, of the really interesting decisions you make. Because when you do choose to score, like I said, you can score a type of building. That's one thing. You can score a city. So we mentioned these cities across here. You can score that, so you could use your scoring city out there. There are some guidelines. You have to have at least 2 buildings built in Lucca, for instance. But when you do that, you're going to score all of the buildings just in that city. So if you've been building buildings in one city alone, you might be able to tap that for a ton of money or a ton of points.
Yeah, you can also score, just like I said, your orange buildings or your green buildings, which your orange buildings always give you money, your green buildings always give you victory points, and that can even be upgraded with one of your monuments. So you could be scoring 3 coins or 3 victory points for every building, basically, every level of building that you've built, which can be quite a bit.
Yeah, those upgrade tiles, Ryan got both of those and scored quite a bit of points and money.
If you put, for example, a bunch of green buildings in one column, you can score all of your green buildings and then immediately score that column and basically double dip and score those twice, which is why you might not want to take some of those early scoring opportunities, because if you're building up to some big scoring moments, you want to make sure that you have enough pawns left to trigger all the different ways you could score some of these.
Yeah, the thing that occurs is early in the game you might score your villas and you had 1 or 2. And then throughout the game you regret that because you took maybe 3 more villas and thought, oh, if I'd scored them now, I would have scored so many more. And it is one of those balance things. You can build up strong on a few places and really strategically score those a few times, or you can spread out a little bit so that you can score more often, but maybe some fewer points.
Yeah, I think that has that kind of heaven and hell feel of like scoring something early and then just kind of forgetting about it for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Like, I scored my villas. I'm not going to buy another villa because why not? Now, if they're green or if they're, the orange, maybe there's still some benefit because you can still trigger those scorings. But if everything we're saying here has one kind of theme, you can tell there's a lot of decisions to make when it comes to scoring.
Yeah, and there's one option that we didn't talk about on your turn, just to back up for a second, that didn't come up in our play.
Oh, the fourth action you could take.
The fourth action you can take in this game, which didn't exist in the old version, is to simply pass. You can pass. I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
I imagine it's going to be something that a player is forced into, because when you pass, you simply collect 2 coins, and that's it.
I think you're always better off scoring, even just to get the score in here for 5 coins. I think you're always better off scoring than passing, but I could see strategically where it might be a good option to have.
Very.
I don't know that you want to do it.
Very rarely, but the point is, I like that they added yet another option just to give all of the flexibility possible on your turn, because I think it adds quite a bit to this game. I had played the original a couple times. Playing this one, particularly on the advanced side. If you're not playing on the advanced side, it is actually quite similar. They did still change some of the scoring, but the scoring is very streamlined. And I want to reiterate, without the advanced mode, you're not playing with the statues in this version. You're not playing with the decorations even in this version. So it becomes a much lighter experience, but probably a great way to get new players into the
I was going to say, if you can play this with somebody and play the base game and they have it hands down, then they probably are ready for the advanced mode. And this is going to get you into some of those heavier games for sure.
Yeah, so this is Palaces of Carrara from Game Brewer. This is going to be probably on GameFound as we speak, so make sure and check it out. If you have any questions and haven't found answers on their campaign, make them in the comments below, and we'll get in there and try to answer what we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.